Schmitt tonight. For the past 8 years, there has been no greater purveyor of Trump derangement than MSNBC's morning show. Joe Scarborough and his wife and several regular panelists spend about 4 hours every single day manufacturing outrage over Donald Trump. No show is more responsible for the vilification of Trump than Morning Joe. No TV program has been more effective at creating this current political climate where 20 to 30% of this country believes that our next president is a fascist threat to democracy, despite the fact that he just won the election in a landslide. No show is more divisive than Morning Joe. No show is more anti-Trump. But on Friday morning, the show's hosts shocked everybody when they entered the lion's den. Joe Scarborough and Mika went to Mar-a-Lago, walking onto the private property of a man that they have compared to Adolf Hitler. Now, this must have taken tremendous bravery, we assume. Either that or Joe and Mika don't really believe their own ridiculous rhetoric. You decide which one it was. In the end, Supreme Leader Trump spoke with the hosts quite graciously, we understand, and allowed them to leave unharmed. This morning, they described their meeting in great detail.
Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we? Joe and I realize it's time to do something different. And that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
Oh, it's the worst. So is he still a fascist threat to, I don't know. What is he? Is he still Hitler? Is he Mussolini? We don't know. We just got that. Last week we heard rumors of a major shakeup at MSNBC. Perhaps even a sale. Whatever Comcast is going to do, we don't know. But suddenly Joe and Mika are going to Mar-a-Lago looking for a fresh start with Trump to restart dialogue.
I wouldn't do it.
After 7 years. The most amazing part was Trump accepted their request to speak because that's just kind of how he is. Here's how their show has sounded nearly every single day for years.
Donald Trump is the protector of women because his bands just killed another woman.
He is as shallow and vacuous as anybody that's ever stepped onto a debate stage.
This individual, this candidate, this convicted felon plays dirty. He plays ugly. He's done it many times in the past.
He is an autocrat, and if he takes power again, he will be an autocrat. And now we're just going full on Hitler.
The second most powerful cable news network in the country spewed that for years, and Trump still won decisively. What a wake-up call for the TDS media this has been, finding out nobody cares no matter how loud, how ridiculous they scream. Americans just want limited government and a good quality of life. That's pretty much it. Joe and Mika slammed over the head by a healthy dose of reality 2 weeks ago. Now they want to restart a dialogue with Donald Trump. Their ratings already plummeted after the election. They're going to fall a lot further tomorrow morning, we suspect. Viewers watching today were enraged. One saying pathetic, a desperate attempt to save a dying show on a dead network. Have some pride and just resign in disgrace. And boycott these two. They have kissed the ring of Trump again. It's 2016 all over again. It's tough to open up dialogue with a man that you've called a Nazi and not be skewered by your audience. That's a really, really thin line to walk. But of course, Joe and Mika had no choice. They can't just scream Orange Man bad for 4 more years. They've been doing it for 8 years. It's now trite. Nobody cares anymore. Certainly nobody is buying the rhetoric at this point. And you can tell that just from pop culture these days. Did you watch any football this weekend? Because the Trump dance is everywhere. We are in the midst of a massive culture shift. For years, nobody in polite society was allowed to acknowledge any kind of support for Trump. It just wasn't allowed. Now it's everywhere. The Washington Post reporting on the MAGA hats of Manhattan today, citing city vendors who are ordering thousands of red MAGA hats to satisfy demand all over New York. I spotted one of those hats. You can see it right there. Greenwich Village a few days after the election. I couldn't believe my eyes. The Post reporting, Trump supporters in this Democratic-leaning area are feeling newly emboldened to wear their beliefs on their heads. Democrat-leaning, it's like 80-20 in Manhattan. This was unheard of a year ago, to see this kind of paraphernalia for Trump wandering around the streets of New York. Wow. But so was Trump getting a standing ovation at New York's Madison Square Garden, which CNN described like this.
It really looks like ancient Rome here. This is sort of the conquering Republican Caesar who's going into the Colosseum and everyone's cheering, and he's got his political gladiators with him. That appearance isn't just about him enjoying the applause. He's sending a message to the Senate.
For sure.
Like, not only are you entertained, but these are my people, and are you willing to fight? Because here's who I have.
Not bad. Fighter John Jones doing the Trump dance to celebrate his win right there. Imagine how freaked out MSNBC viewers are to see these dances all over the place. I mean, college football, NFL, UFC. Where else is it going to pop up? Not long ago, the media was so shocked to even see a MAGA hat in public, they just assumed that this young man in this video had to be the bad guy. You remember this. Nick Sandmann was shredded by the media, who later discovered that the Native American guy with the little instrument was actually the aggressor. Taunting Sandmann because of his hat. Taunting a kid, a high school kid, because of his hat. Sandmann sued and won settlements from CNN and the Washington Post. Now Nick Sandmanns are everywhere, even in blue cities where they're not supposed to be. Axios reporting on the Republican coming out party. Mary Swallow, a 63-year-old Democrat in Philadelphia, told the Wall Street Journal she hadn't realized how Trumpy her neighborhood had become. Oh, Mary, are you going to be okay? For 8 years, the bulk of Donald Trump's voters were the silent majority. That's how it's been this whole time. And they were very silent because Trump was very vilified. Most people were terrified of Soviet-style retaliation for making their politics known. Would you lose your job?
Not me.
Would your friends all leave you? Would somebody burn your house down? Who knows? Some will continue to stay in the dark, as they have for a long time, but it does appear that many are now showing their MAGA for the first time. Sebastian Gorka worked in the Trump White House. He joins me now along with Trish Regan. Good to have you both on. Trish, the silent majority is a little less silent these days.
A little less silent. What do you know? I mean, there you are in New York City, Rob, experiencing it firsthand in Greenwich Village with the red MAGA hat. I live in the suburbs of New York City, and I can't tell you how many people have come up to me in the last week and said how relieved they are, how happy they are, how this is going to be a new time. Like, people were afraid. There was a real intense fear to admit how you felt. And I think all of a sudden there's this relief, like we can go back to normal again. Thank goodness.
That's exactly right. Sebastian, your thoughts?
I wish I'd known the topic more in advance, because I wrote a whole article on my Substack called The Power of a Red Hat. So for a month before the election, I had my MAGA hat stapled to my head. I could have been wearing a suit. Doesn't matter where I was, I had it on. And I walked through O'Hare Airport. O'Hare, okay? I had to make notes of all the people who stopped me. First, TSA security check. From behind the magnetometer, TSA agent sees me, and he looks at my hat, and he lifts his fist in front of his face, and he does this with his mouth. Fight. That's the TSA security guy. I'm walking down the main drag of O'Hare, okay? Chicago. A woman from one of the bars shouts out in front of everybody, "Go Trump!" And I'm going, what has happened to America? So whether it's dancing, the NFL, this is the joy, this is the vibes that Kamala promised us, but ended up as Fear Inc. Well, guess what? We own it, because now we are allowed to be proud again, and we're not going to take it from the stinking wokerati.
Trish, 60 Minutes last night hammering the Trump cabinet picks. Take a listen to some of this.
Pete Hegseth to lead the 3 million people of the Department of Defense. He's a combat veteran, most recently a morning show host on Fox News with no government experience. Former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence. She sought a pardon for Edward Snowden, who leaked U.S. secrets and now lives in Russia. And Robert Kennedy Jr. for Secretary of Health and Human Services, a skeptic of vaccinations.
Yeah, so they're hammering all of these people for these various reasons, but let's just go back and talk about the fact that maybe the reason that, Kennedy has some skepticisms is something that the government has been concealing from us. Maybe Tulsi Gabbard supporting Edward Snowden is because our intelligence state likes to lie to the American people. It's so funny to see the media circling the wagons around the government rather than saying, you know what, maybe there's a reason why Tulsi did this. Maybe there's a reason why Kennedy did this.
I'm really troubled by that circling of the wagons. In fact, I've heard some just little scuttlebutt within the intel community. People have come to me and talked about Tulsi, and I'm like, okay, so what you got? What you got, right? Well, she was opposed to the war between, she didn't want us involved with Ukraine. And I'm like, well, that doesn't seem like it's that outrageous a viewpoint. In America, are you not allowed to have a viewpoint? Are you not allowed to be in opposition to a war? How does that make you a traitor or an enemy? To me, an American should always be able to give their point of view. And guess what? A president is better served by having many people in the cabinet with all kinds of different views. I love that RFK Jr. is challenging the status quo on health. I love that Pete Hegseth is challenging the woke insanity, which needs to be challenged within the U.S. military. Because guess what? We need to win. We need to care a little bit less about, how the transgender over there in God knows what department is feeling about XYZ on whatever day, and a little bit more about winning and making sure that we are strong enough. So I think America, they said as much, right? Yeah. That's what Americans said when they went to the voting booth. Enough.
Right. Sebastian, final thoughts. Go ahead.
When we were in the White House, I was very, very open. If the establishment media, the Washington Post and the CNN ever said anything nice about Sebastian Gorka, every Trump voter should ask for their money back. Everything they're doing with Pete, with all of them, with Matt, is because they're the right choice for the job. Yep. Take it to the bank. If the establishment hates them, President Trump has chosen the right candidate, period, end of story.
Well said. Sebastian Gorka, Chris Regan. Good to see you. Thanks so much. Trump announcing today he'll declare an emergency and use the military for deportations. How will that enhance this effort? Congressman Chip Roy is coming up next.